A visit to the Ajanta caves and a leisurely tour through their magnificent interiors will provide an idea of the beauty within and outside these caves, forming a perfect background to the calm, contemplative life of a monk. As time progressed and the concept of the Buddha grew in the eyes of his followers, from savant to savior, and then to the ultimate image of godhood, so did his figures and depictions on rock. They kept growing to mammoth proportions to signify his stature and showed him in various postures of spiritual benefaction. Even though the mural found in the Ajanta caves are renowned and attract visitors and connoisseurs from all over the world, the sculptures within the caves do not pale in comparison. They have their own status in the world of art and are recognized and commended for their uniqueness and beauty. In fact, they are very much a part of the core concept of the caves themselves and the architectural ingenuity of the artists who created them. Sculpture in the Deccan was closely linked to architecture. Here in the Ajanta caves, the sculpture grows out of the structure that accommodates it and is considered an inseparable part of it. Walking up to cave number 1, we are struck by the flurry of life on its broad, grainy facade. Its rich ornamentation includes rows of elephants raising their trunks in salute or lifting branches, wild buffaloes turning on each other, graceful swans lazing among lotuses in a pool, and lovers engrossed in the art of love. Further on, the sculpturing clings to the architecture with floral designs, lotus medallions, jewel patterns, and mythical creatures carved tastefully on pillars and columns. It is a rich, classical feast for the eyes, a continuing display of refined artistry. Thus, the sculptors not only carved out figures and designs, but they were also responsible for the overall structure of the caves, which required elaborate, imaginative planning and execution. These caves were created by architects and sculptors, not by builders and masons. The project was fired by dreams rather than blueprints. Today, the sculptures have obviously lost some of their visual brilliance. The long ages since their creation have eroded a layer of plaster and paint that had originally covered them. This had once added a sheen of color to the surface of the sculptures. We get a glimpse of what they must have looked like in those early days when we examine some of the sculptures in caves number 1, 2, 16 and 17. Here we see patches of plaster that remain undamaged by time, vestiges of their wholeness. What is now lost is evidently another visual dimension, an impression of depth and proper perspective. The caves were charged with spiritual power. They reverberated with the chanting of monks, the air endlessly pregnant with myriad voices joined in prayer. Centuries rolled on, and the caves only gained in power, steeped in an ambience that inspired more art, more devotion. The prominent concern, of course, is that of depicting the Buddha in a wide range of attitudes and representations. The sculptors must have invested particular attention and love as they worked on his images, adding an edge of devotion and awe to their art. This becomes evident as we look at the enormous images of the Buddha that are carved out in the sanctums located at the back of the pillared viharas or residential quarters. The Buddha is seated in the Vajrasana pose with his hands in the Dhammacakkappavattana position. Attended by a Bodhisattva, the serene countenance of the Buddha radiates understanding and compassion. The sculptors were undoubtedly endowed with the ability to convey emotive nuances through the hard medium of rock. In Cave 19, the figures of the Buddha that flank the entrance have been created lovingly, projecting a consciousness that clearly combines detachment with universal love. This is art of the highest order. It shows how a refined sensibility can evoke subtlety even from the most implacably rigid surfaces. The delicate touches of these smaller figures can now be set against the massive masterpiece we find in cave number 26, where an enormous sculpture of the Buddha during his Mahaparinirvana, the moment when he gave up his earthly body, has been poignantly portrayed. Returning to cave number 19, it is worth taking a tour through its interiors to witness some dramatic moments captured in telling relief. Besides the richly sculpted facade, the carvings on pillars, columns and arches, the faces and foliage, we also find panels that mutely tell their tales. Here is one with the Buddha in the Varada Mudra pose, once again a picture of compassion. Beside him stands a woman shorn of finery. This is none other than Amrapali, the beautiful courtesan who had mesmerized the city of Vaishali. Now she stands showing her devotion to the Buddha, having given up her former life and riches. In a moment of emotion, we grasp an entire story in stone. In cave number 26, we find the Buddha being tempted by Mara during his meditation under the Bodhi tree. The scene depicts Mara's three daughters trying to seduce Siddhartha away from his goal of realization. The next portion shows them sitting gloomily with their father after failing in their mission. Besides images of the Buddha and the stories associated with him, we also find figures of celestial beings like Vidyadharas, Gandharvas and Kinnaras. Youthful amorous couples, birds, snakes and animal figures, flora and fauna are also represented on some of the panels. An example of this is the scene of the Shravasti miracle when Buddha replicated himself to confuse his opponents. The Ajanta is a storehouse of history and artistic heritage. These caves not only pay homage, they also tell stories. And they also record the march of an artistic sensibility. Thousands of people come to visit these caves. They arrive armed with some knowledge of the Ajanta murals, these world-famous paintings that everyone keeps talking about. They return stunned by the sight of magnificent sculptures, an entirely new world in stone that not many people are aware of. The Ajanta is a treasure chest of sculpture. It teaches us a valuable lesson on how a true artist can make a mountain live and breathe.